So one thing, Tammy, I'm very curious about, if you're open to sharing, how old were you when you learned that you're on the spectrum?
Very funny story. So actually, someone asked me, like, when were you told? And I was like, I don't ever remember a time I didn't know. So
Okay.
I was identified as an infant as being impacted because I wasn't growing. I was teeny tiny. And so,
Yeah.
I was taken home from the hospital with my grandparents because I had a teenage mother. And so she
Mhm.
went home, I went home, and they took over my care. And primarily because she hadn't graduated high school yet, my grandmother was a stay-at-home parent. Um, and so I was getting fed. Um, and I wasn't growing. And then they measured my head and my head wasn't growing. And they were very concerned about that because why we measure heads is to make sure the brain is growing. That's why
Right.
we measure heads.
Right.
And so they were very concerned that my head was very little. And they did a consult to, I believe it was the Children's Hospital, University of Seattle, because everything happened in the 70s through the University of Seattle,
Right.
for Alaska. So, and that's when they they knew is probably what was being impacted. I was born, in the late 70s, right, not too late after
Mhm.
everyone kind of figured out stuff there. And so at that point, I think they probably, right in the 70s, it was the worst case scenario, is what everyone assumed. Now we know drastically different and we know what the spectrum was. And so at it was kind of this sense that Tammy will always probably need help. And so then it turned into everything that was a little quirky about me had to do with my prenatal
Yeah.
exposure, which I don't think everything that's quirky about me. I think some of it's just,
Some
you know,
quirks are just quirks.
exactly. Um,
Yeah.
so when I would ask why, well, why is that? It was, well, because this happened and this happened. But it was never said with shame or blame. It was said with, this is just what happened. Sometimes people ask, because I'm very transparent, like, are you really like mad that this happened to you?
Mhm.
There's lots of things for me to be angry with my biological mother, but that was never one of
Okay.
because I don't think she didn't intend to hurt me. She was young and no one knew in this, like, there was no warnings in the 70s about alcohol
Right.
consumption.
Right.
So
It was
there
it
was
was too
no,
new.
yeah. Um
Yeah.
and so
And
there was
me
no,
10 years before, my mom was pregnant with me during 63. Nobody knew back then. So, yeah.
yeah, it's so I just think that I don't know, I've always known. And I think what we assumed, because I had a lot of support early on and things got easier because I did have a lot of supports, that once things got easier, then it no longer impacted me.
Hmm.
And so I remember it was around middle school, maybe high school, when I stopped hearing my grandmother telling everyone. She told every teacher, she told every doctor, she even told the dentist, she told, like, everyone just knew. And I can
Yeah.
remember distinctly, why did the dentist need to know? But now I know the dentists actually do need to know. Um, and then I asked her later on, I said, why'd you stop telling people? And she goes, well, we didn't think it really impacted you that much anymore. And I can't remember her other reason at this point, but and so when I came out of college and it was such an issue in the state of Alaska, and there was so I think what I thought was everyone who had prenatal exposure was like me, like,
Mhm.
kind of these black and white thinking, but we had very
Well,
kind
and
of,
that's the normal way. People are very egocentric. You know, we we generalize our own experiences to be normal.
yeah, that's a good point. And
Yeah.
so then when I found out, like, there was a spectrum and I laid on the spectrum, and then I started thinking about, like, and I remember looking at this list and I was like, oh, yep, 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 yep. Oh, and that's still, yep, nope. All of those are still here, was when I was like, okay, I'm still impacted. It's not
Yeah.
like it went away. It
Right.
just changed
Right.
because I grew and changed, my brain changed and accommodation, like, It's not static. It
Right,
doesn't stay the same.
right, right, right. Because we do get, no matter how much repetition we may or may not need to learn things, we do get coping skills. And so we're able to adapt and then, our challenges are just going to change because we're at a different place in life.
Exactly.